Okay, awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Miss Christina, for joining me today to share a little bit about what your experience has been in working with me. You and I have known each other for quite a long time now. It feels like,
Yeah.
geez, over 10 years. What has it been? 12,
Yeah,
13?
just about 13 years now.
Yeah. So I'm talking today with the beautiful Christina Martinez. She is one of my clients currently. She's also been a client of mine in the past. We've done some work together over the years, and she has agreed to sit down and chat with me today to tell me a little bit about some of the benefits that she's received from working with me. But before we dive into that, I just want to ask you, I don't know if you can remember the original reason why you reached out to me or the reason that you reached out to me most recently, but what made you reach out to get help and support? I'd love for you to share a little bit about what the problem was to begin with.
Gosh, it's so loaded when you really think about it because yeah, I had started a small business 18 years ago, didn't really know what I was doing. And then 15 years ago, I lost my first husband. And so I had heard that you had been working with some of the people in my office and that they were raving about the breakthroughs that they were having both personally and professionally. And I figured, well, gosh, I've just had serious devastation personally. And I'm now a widow at 31 with a baby. And I'm thinking, how do I build a business at the same time? How do I find some sort of, the balance, I guess would be a good word, but that was initially what prompted me to reach out. And then throughout the years, we've stayed in touch. And then during COVID, I was realizing that I didn't want my business to flounder coming out of COVID. I wanted to make sure it would flourish and reached back out to you. And we've been working together now again for about 15 months solid.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love what you're talking about because you're talking about initially you reached out to me because you were going through a bit of a tough time, but there's also some professional development that you were hoping to receive. And I know in some of the conversations that we've had that you've actually gotten way, way beyond professional development and business development feedback, advice, and wisdom over the years that we've worked together. So I would love for you to share, in our time together and the work that we've done over all these years that we've known each other, what have been some of your biggest benefits that you've received or your biggest takeaways?
I think the number one thing is that I'm not two separate individuals. I don't show up one way personally and a completely different way professionally.
Yeah.
And I had it in my mind that I was supposed to. So, really, working with you showed me how I could take who I was on a personal level and bring that in on the professional level, especially because I'm in a very masculine dominant industry. But how do I show up as a woman? How do I present myself as a business owner and serve the people across the table? So I think the biggest thing for me was that I could show up professionally as who I was. I just had to learn how to transfer the skills that I had as a person and bring them into my business.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. What you're talking about sounds to me a lot like just true authenticity, like being able to show up from a place of wholeness and authenticity.
Oh, absolutely. For those of us that have some sort of corporate or bureaucratic type background, we're almost conditioned
Yeah.
to show up at the workplace a certain way. And
Yeah.
I honestly didn't love how I was showing up
Yeah.
every single day in my work life before.
Yeah. It
So
was
coming to the
exhausting.
business, it's extremely exhausting.
Yeah.
And so I was thrilled to see that I could be me,
Mhm.
but then partner that with the professional development work that you and I have done throughout the years. And I feel like that is what has allowed for me to grow leaps and bounds when I really immerse myself in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you were talking about and saying, coming from that sort of corporate bureaucratic background. I know you used to be a teacher, so you were part of the school system and there were certain expectations. And then when you joined your current profession, which is fairly masculine dominated, you were kind of expected to act like, think like, work like a man, and to some extent even dress like a man. I know we talked a little bit about this just recently. And it really prevents us from being our true authentic selves, especially as women. And it's very difficult to play that charade. And so when you think about some of the shifts and changes that have taken place in your business, especially over the last year, what would you say have been some of the biggest aha moments, the biggest shifts, the biggest changes that you've made in your business that are allowing you to operate out of your feminine power versus all that masculine draining energy that we talked about?
Well, I realized that operating out of that feminine power was not a hindrance to my business,
Mm-hmm.
that it actually allowed for me to create collaboration and connection and community with those around me, as opposed to the very individualized side that masculine energy has a tendency to show up as. And that's just natural for me. It was my job to bring kids together in community, to show how we could all learn from one another and teach one another simultaneously. And learning how to transfer that into the business that I run, that's probably been the best, is that I could show my feminine energy and people would not see that as a weakness.
Yes, I love that. And I'm curious, what effect has that had on your business and your results?
In the last 3 years, I'm recently married. Well, I'm remarried to one of my business partners, actually. And in the last 3 years, we have doubled what took us 8 years prior to do.
Wow. Wow.
So I would say it's extremely significant.
Yeah.
And we're grateful that we have the ability to do that, especially coming out of what the last 18 months has been for many people.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, would you say that what percentage of that growth that you're talking about would you contribute to some of the things that you've been learning through our work together?
Oh my goodness, I would say at a minimum 75 to 80%.
Really?
Because,
Wow.
well, of course, because if you think about it, I'm learning how I show up in my personal life, which I think is very successful, and how to bridge the gap that I was feeling in my professional life. How do I bring that to this side?
Yeah.
And that continuous work that you and I have done to allow for me to see in so many instances where it's a breakdown, and then figure out how to build it, how to repair it, how to structure it in a way that doesn't just serve me, but it serves those that I get to serve at the same time.
Right.
And so that's why I would heavily weight it as the 75 to 80%, because it's so much more involved than we would be able to give it credit for otherwise.
Yeah. Wow. That's huge. That's a big difference in your life experience as a result of our work together. And I'm really happy that you've had this big of an impact, that it's had that big of an impact on you. So
I'm so grateful for you.
I know, I'm so grateful for you too. It's always been such a pleasure to work with you too. I absolutely adore this woman. And so if I can just sort of summarize, basically you went from a place where you were operating in very masculine energy before we started doing our work, and also running off of old programming and conditioning that said you should act like or think like a man, or even, just have insecurities around how you're showing up as a woman in the workforce. And as a result of working through those blocks and challenges over the years and learning new ways to create collaboration and community and connection with yourself, your true authentic self, as well as others, you're now experiencing more abundance and prosperity than ever before.
Yeah, it truly is the epitome of creating freedom in your life.
Yeah.
Because I am free to show up as who I am.
Yeah.
And it is received in a warm, authentic manner.
Awesome. I love it. This is huge. This is huge. I hope you guys are listening to this. It's very important. So thank you so much for sharing what your experience has been like. I'm curious, is there anything else that you would like to share about your experience?
I think the number one thing is that we live in such a world where we think there is constant judgment around us. And I think sometimes we place that on ourselves, and therefore we're receiving that back. Mm-hmm. And what I have learned through my work with you, whether it be individual or in some of the group environments that you've allowed for me to participate in, is that there are more women like me who can be judgment-free and be authentic with other women without feeling the competitive side that we're almost ingrained to believe exists as children. Yeah. And working with you has shown me that I can do that with other women in my life as well. Because the more we actually link arms together as women, the better we are for everyone else as well as ourselves.
Absolutely. I would agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much for bringing up your experience in the group work that we've done too, because I know you and I've done a lot of personal one-on-one work, but that group component that exists in the Bravehearted Sisterhood, which you're a part of, one of the reasons I brought that community together was because I wanted for women to know, like, you are not alone. And I think so often we get wrapped up in our own story, our own victim mentality, whatever that programming and conditioning is that leads to that, that we think we're the only ones that are struggling with that, but we're not. And when we come together in community, we can actually learn from one another and hear one another in our vulnerability, which creates a lot of connection, like you just said. And I think you're learning how to pass that along to your team, which is not just women, but men too.
Yes.
And I'm really excited to see what you're going to be able to do in your own work environment with your team at work, using the tools that you've learned in our work together, in both the group and the one-on-one work that we're doing together. So we'll come back and we'll do another testimonial interview here in a couple of years to see what's come of all that. But anyway, well, okay. So is there any last words of wisdom or advice that you'd like to give the people who are watching today? Just advice on something that you've learned in our time together that you'd like to share and give back?
Yeah, I would say if you have this internal desire to grow, Jess is the person to reach out to.
Oh.
Have conversation with her and let her walk you through really hitting on where that's coming from and what could be if you actually work through it. Yeah. That's what I would say.
Right. Do the work. It's important,
do
right?
The work.
Man, I tell you what, embracing growth, that's one of the hardest things that we can do, but it's one of the best things we can do for ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah. It's the best work I've ever done on myself.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for the shout out. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your vulnerability, your connection with us, and also just what you've been through and all the successes that you've achieved as a result of you saying yes to you and doing the work. So
grateful I didn't do it by myself.
Yeah. Yeah, we need support. So I'm glad you reached out and asked for it. All right. Well, thank you so much. And you guys heard it here. She said, if you guys want to grow and evolve, reach out and connect with me. If you want, you can always just sign up, go to my website, which is jessbonasso.com. That's JESSBONASSO.com to learn more about what working with me might be like. And I'll be posting this video interview on the website. And also in our community on Facebook, which is the Bravehearted Woman on Facebook. So if you want to find that group there, you can as well. So that's it for today. Thanks so much, honey. I really appreciate you joining me and taking your time today to share.
It was my pleasure.
Thanks, hon. Bye-bye.